Welcome everyone and welcome to today's video. Now today is something a little bit different. At the weekend I did my F1 watch along for the Italian Grand Prix, and what a race it was. I think it was one of the best Italian Grand Prix we've had in a long time. Monza truly delivered this time around. Max winning his 10th Grand Prix in a row, breaking the all-time record of wins in a row set by Sebastian Vettel in a Red Bull all those years ago. And well, there was good racing up and down the grid as well to keep an eye out on. Now, after the race, I stuck around and chatted all things to do with the race and F1 in general, which I love doing with you guys. It's the whole reason I do these F1 watch-alongs, and it kind of turned into kind of a little Q&A slash podcast episode. So I've slashed this down for you to those talking points, to those questions, and yeah, put this together in a video for you to listen with your earbuds. You can obviously watch this as well, but I hope you guys enjoy this, and yeah, look forward to doing it all again in a couple of weeks time at Singapore Grand Prix. So let's get into it. And there we go, guys. That is the end of your Italian Grand Prix. Max Verstappen, who else? Once again, yeah, Super Max, 10 wins in a row. A very mature performance today, I will admit, from Max. He waited, and he kept the pressure on Sainz. He made one effort, and he knew how Sainz defended, and he went, nah, I'm just gonna wait. And he got a good run on him, showed his nose, forced Sainz into a mistake, and then capitalized on that. And then it was just see you later, off into the distance. If I was to give driver of the day, mine would be Max today. I think that was a great drive from Max, a mature performance, one of his best that we've seen this season, to be honest, with the way that he handled it. Kachok, I'd have to disagree with you there. I don't think that was the most boring race of the season. I think there was a lot that happened there. Monza in years past has been very boring, very boring, and that, I think, was very entertaining. Yes, Max won, but for the most part, at least the first half of the race, I thought it was intriguing. I thought there was a lot happening. Max was biding his time. But unfortunately, as was predicted, the Ferraris, with their lower downforce setup, just were not able to look after those tyres as good as the Red Bull has all season. And that's why that is a 1-2 for Red Bull. A very good performance from Perez today. A mature performance from Max. And look, the Mercedes were best of the rest. Not a strong weekend for them. Albon, yes, he lost a position. It says on there to Hamilton. But you know what? Bloody hell. What's that? A double points finish for Albon in 2 weeks? Brilliant result for him. That's all right, Kachok. Well, look, Singapore. Hopefully Singapore throws up something a bit different. Surely Red Bull got mechanical issues still in them. Surely. I thought that was enjoyable, Connor. I really did. It's time for Ferrari getting number one. I think they are... Yeah, I think they're suffering with treating both drivers the same. Could Leclerc have maybe made up more position? Could Leclerc have made up more time on Max, or at least secured a P2 today? Possibly. It looked like it, that there was a stage in this race that Sainz was holding up Leclerc. Leclerc had probably looked after his tyres a bit better towards the end of the first stint. Yeah, but they just don't want to do it. But Leclerc had more race pace. I think so, AD. I think so. But it was intriguing to see Carlos Sainz, and it was good to see him fight really hard today. I don't think we've really seen that as Sainz at all since he's come to F1. We really saw a Sainz who was going, I'm getting this podium no matter what. He held off Verstappen for a period of time. He had a few moves on Leclerc. He was bolshy today, and I like that, because Sainz has always been deemed as being a bit more of like the cooler heads, the calmer one of the two. And today we saw a feisty Sainz, and I'd like to see more of that in the future. Had a Piastri didn't get a penalty, so Piastri had a move with Lewis, which unfortunately Lewis cut across him into the turn 4 chicane. And he just misjudged it. They came together and he got a puncture from it. Lewis very lucky not to avoid any damage, and Piastri had to come in and pit. So that's why he finished in P12. Hamilton got a 5-second time penalty from that for causing a collision, rightfully so. It was a misjudgment on his part, and he was able to create a gap to Alex Albon for that deficit, or that penalty not to mean anything. There was a few incidents today, actually. There was a few incidences that could have resulted any other day, a car flying off into the barrier, and we could have seen a safety car that would have really spiced things up a bit. But it wasn't to be. But I still think with the strategy, the tyres as well, I think people were definitely struggling with the tyre deck today. A lot higher than they foresee it to be. Hence why we saw some of the teams further down the midfield make a 2-stop, like Lawson finished P11 with a 2-stop at Monza, which never really is the case. And then he ended up, I think that's what we saw, a lot of lockups down into T1. We saw some brave moves and people kind of saying they were forced off as well. So I thought that was one of more of the interesting Monza races we've had in recent times. Max is turning into complete driver. Yes. I'd still, I am going to hold back on that just a touch. And the reason I say that is because I still would like to see at least one more time a championship or a year where Lewis gets a car that's on equal footing with Red Bull and see how they go wheel to wheel. Because I still think there's a psychological thing there between Max and Lewis, or that Lewis has on Max. I think with other drivers, Max is definitely, especially with other drivers around his age, I think he's a lot more mature. When it comes to Lewis, there's something psychologically that, I don't know, just switches in him. And I would say he's a complete driver if we see the Max we saw today, if Hamilton has that opportunity to go against him again. But yeah, he's definitely very, very close, that's for sure. Don't be done with F1, Alfie. Don't be done with it. Look, F1, it's a very dominant year, unfortunately, for kind of just general F1 fans. If you're a Max Verstappen fan, happy days. He's about to win his 3rd World Championship in a row. But we do want... I personally have never had any issues with a driver dominating or a team dominating. My issue is how the domination occurs. So if you think of Mercedes' dominance, they at least had... I think there was only maybe like 2 years out of those 8 years where, okay, you could probably say they were boring years. But the other times, you had Lewis versus Nico, you had Lewis versus the Ferraris, then you had the Red Bulls. And we always had other teams winning races. And this time, Red Bull were just a league of their own, and they've got a driver who's in a league of his own. They quite evidently want a second driver. It'd be interesting to see if Danny Rick joins next year. If they're still that far ahead, if they're allowed to fight and stuff, I don't know. And if Danny Rick's still got it, but I think Danny Rick will be there at Red Bull next year, and I think that's what we want. I don't care if Max wins every single race. I just want there to be a challenge for him every single race, not him breezing into the distance. Today was a bit of a challenge for him. He still kind of made it easy, and we still expected him to win. But at least there was more to it. If you get what I mean, like so. 2021 is a rarity in F1. That's the thing. We might not get that, especially with the state of affairs at the moment. We might not get that for a couple more years, unfortunately. And what's happened, which is a real shame. Craig, thank you for the sub, buddy. What is a real shame actually is that the cost cap era, where it was brought in to and designed to bring teams back together, to bring competition closer, is actually probably having the opposite effect, because Red Bull is so far ahead and they've absolutely nailed it with their car. Mercedes and Ferrari can't go spend 300, 400, 500 million to rectify the issue and bring in effect what would be a brand new car at the next race. They have to stick with their concept for the year. So that's the thing with like Mercedes. They can't fully change the whole car until next year because they're limited with the cost cap. So yeah, it's just the way that it's played out. But you have to give credit to Red Bull. They've absolutely nailed it, and it's up to the other teams to catch up to them. Man, G, look, there's no sour grapes here, buddy. There's no sour grapes. I just want to see competition. It's like with football. I don't like seeing a team win every single football match. I want them to struggle to win. I want there to be competition. I want there to be... It's so much more entertaining as well when a title race goes down to the last day of the season, or at least the last couple of races or last couple of days of the season. I want that level of competition. And what we've had in previous times, at least with Mercedes, people go back to Mercedes dominance, and even like Vettel's dominance as well. There was at least other teams who had wins in that time, who looked like they could challenge the big team, the dominant team of that time. Max Verstappen is very much in like a Michael Schumacher era at the moment. Michael Schumacher had a teammate he absolutely obliterated, was the #1 driver. No matter where you put him on the grid, you expected him to win the race by 20 odd seconds. And that's what we're seeing at the moment. And people who are newer to F1 have never experienced that before. And Max himself is even getting bored of it. Max himself has even said, like, that's why you hear him say, I'm not going to be in F1 for long if it's like this. Like, he enjoys winning, but there's a manner in winning. You want to fight for the wins. Even in sim racing, winning a race from start to finish where you don't, like, you beat everyone and you're the fastest by 20 odd seconds, actually isn't that enjoyable. You look at it and you go, yeah, I won. But it's very short-lived enjoyment. So, Vettel had pretty close seasons in there. Yeah, exactly. He had his, I mean, after he won 9 races in a row, there was chopping and changing of winners all over the place. So, people don't like talk about 500 million spending by Merc. Well, yeah, Red Bull spent 500 million as well. So did Ferrari. There were other teams there who were spending millions of pounds, and they weren't able to compete with Mercedes. So it's what you do with that money as well. But yeah, look, it is what it is, and it's down to the other teams to catch up. So. Mercedes weren't as dominant as Red Bull at their peak. I think they were. The difference between is that so Mercedes were still winning races by 30 odd seconds, 40 odd seconds, lapping half of the field, like you've seen the Red Bull now. The difference is that it wasn't one driver who won every single race and dominated. Lewis had Nico, who was very, very good, an eventual world champion. You had some mega battles between Lewis and Nico. Lewis then also had Bottas, who was no slouch either. Yes, he never won a world championship, and over the course of a season, Hamilton completely outperformed him. But Bottas had weekends where he dominated. Lewis couldn't get anywhere near him. He had like grand slams where he was fastest in every practice session, fastest in qualifying, fastest in the race, and like, for a period of time, looked like he might be able to take it to Lewis, but eventually it never turned out to be the case. And there were also races, though, where Lewis also completely outclassed Bottas. But at the moment, Max is just so dominant to his teammates, and it's a credit to him. And it's also a credit to his management as well, guys. Like, I don't think you realise F1 is a political game. So if you was an F1 driver, I would not want to go into a team where I'm number 2 or I've got equal footing with another driver, especially if you're like a top-ish driver, right? So if you're like already been in F1 for a little while and you're looking to get into a top team, you do not want to be the second driver. You don't even want to be given equal footing. You quickly want to go into a team and get the preferential treatment. Get the preferential pit stops, get the upgrades first, play the political game, and position yourself in a team where you get that preferential treatment. And Verstappen has done that brilliantly, because it also helps he's a mega quick driver if he's able to solidify that and push that. But every driver who's come in is, no matter what PR nonsense they give, Max is #1 driver. And this is what other teams, the likes of Ferrari, are struggling with at the moment. It's actually a detriment to them having Sainz and Leclerc as equal drivers. It's what Mercedes, Russell is quite... You see Russell is definitely trying to push Hamilton. He knows Hamilton because he's been there so long, and because of his accolades, he is evidently... They won't say there's a #1 driver, but Hamilton is the #1 driver. That's why Russell's trying to push himself as well. And you'd want that as an F1 driver. And that's what Max has been able to do. So fair play to the team. Every time Max gets a team, it just shows who he is. That's why he's the #1 driver. Yeah, and the best drivers do that. The best drivers do that. And I think Lewis stamped his authority as being the #1 driver. Well, I say that. I think Lewis stamped his authority as being the fastest driver in the Mercedes team pretty quickly. But there was always that, because Nico had been there longer and because Nico was German in a German team, I think there was also that element around it as well. But the quickest drivers quickly stamped their authority down as being the #1 driver on merit. Max has done that. Fernando Alonso has done that. What other teams here at the moment? Alex Albon has done that. Ferrari at the moment, you could argue Leclerc should be the #1 driver, but his performances haven't necessarily made him stamp his authority down as being the #1 driver. And I think that's why Sainz still gets a bit of an equal treatment. So Alonso has done that. I mean, he is Daddy Stroll's team and he is Baby Stroll. But yeah, I think I mean, let's be honest, like Stroll's not going anywhere anytime soon, but Alonso is definitely #1 there. Can't deny that. Disagree. Max have had Gasly, Albon with nothing to lose attitude to go after him, but the guys always show being better than them. Max has spent 3 years chasing Hamilton and Bottas. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that they came in. I think Red Bull's a very high-pressured environment as well. There's a very big high-pressured environment. Every team runs differently, just like every football team runs differently, and every sports team and every business, like, could be in the same industry doing exactly the same thing, but they run completely different ways. So, Lewis Kuzma says sabotage that season. Well, it'd be interesting to see what Lewis is. I'm sure he's going to do a tell-all book at some point when he retires. He's got to, because that year is very intriguing, because his whole engineer team switched sides of the garage, which was a bit iffy. And I've heard stories that it got very, very toxic between them in that team. So, and I think that's why Nico retired when he did. He's like, I'm one and done. That's it. I'm one and done, because I can't handle this toxic atmosphere for another year. Like, nah, I'll go out on a high and leave it all to Lewis and stuff. So, there's ever been a teammate for Max who has actually beaten him? The only one I think you can really say who was probably on a level playing field was Danny Rick. Obviously they had some comings together, didn't they? Most notoriously Baku. And I think that's why Danny Rick left. Danny Rick left because his story will be interesting as well one day. But I think he left because he quite evidently saw that the team was shifting in a direction towards Max. Even though they still liked him and they wanted to keep him, he saw a shift in direction that preferred Max. Danny Rick is slightly older. Max is the up-and-coming youngster, like, won his first race in Red Bull, and that's why he moved. He moved because he's like, well, I can quite evidently see, while I am still quick enough, I'm not the #1 driver here. As much as that horseshit they give me, I'm gonna move to another team, and that's why he moved to Renault, wasn't it? Where he became the #1 driver. It wasn't the right career move for him, but you don't know what he's probably seen on the inside. Yeah. Kind of the worst end of 2018 when his car kept failing, leading him to break mentally in Japan. Yeah. Daniel Max was just being friendly, but I think if they actually fight, Max could beat him. Oh yeah, I think there's no doubt that Max has developed as a driver, most definitely, and he's super quick, and he's one of the quickest drivers in ever in F1. There's only a few people who can properly take it to him on the grid for outright pace. And Danny Rick, yeah, he had a lot of reliability issues, didn't he, in that year? And I think he just got really, really down on it and just went, oh, that's just gonna I'm just gonna move. If he had like good performances, or if he had like the car worked okay and he didn't have those reliability issues, he probably would have been. It might have swayed his decision to stay and go, okay, I'll give it another year. I'll sign a new contract. But when you're already thinking about the team is preferring one side of the garage to yours, or the other side of the garage to yours, and then those happen, even though those things are like out of your control. Your mind does funny things, isn't it? And probably made him think, nah, fuck this, I'm out, I'm going. So what is the story behind the engineers at Merc? The story is that basically after Lewis won the first 2 championships at Mercedes in 2014-15, they switched the personnel of Lewis. So Nico and Lewis's side of the garage, the engineers, the people who work on his car and stuff, they switched and gave it to Nico. And the story is that was calculated. It was done to give Nico. I think Nico really wanted it. I think he pushed for it. He was like, "Well, I want every single advantage that I can get. If I can get Lewis's team, like, I'll have his team or whatever." Just trying to gain every little advantage that he can. And I think Mercedes I think genuinely as well, I think the higher ups at Mercedes went, "Look, we've got a German driver. We're a German manufacturer. The British guy has won 2 titles in a row. Do you not think it's now time for our German driver in our German team to have a world championship?" Like, and I think, and the rumors are that Nico got a lot of assistance that year. And then really, it was only because it still came down to the last race of the season, and it was only because Lewis's engine blew up while he was 25 seconds ahead of Nico in the lead at Malaysia, and he lost maximum points, that he didn't win that championship. Otherwise, Lewis still would have won the championship. So, yeah. That's basically it. And I think one day it will all come out with Hamilton saying something with a tell-all book or something along those lines. So, personal poll: is Hamilton a bully? In what sense of the word? What you think he's a bully in the team or on the track? I mean, I don't know the guy personally. I don't know anyone personally within Mercedes, so I don't know how he goes about his business. Whether he has that kind of, but on the track, I would say no. I don't think he is a bully on track, but also in the team, trying to pull the team towards him. Well, as we said, I think every driver does the same. Every driver does it. There are only 20 spots on this grid, and if you're lucky enough to be there in the first place, you know how fickle F1 can be. You want to go in there. F1 is just as much about the political side and how you position yourself, rather than like the career game, as it is being quick out on track. And you, no matter what team you're in, you want to be the #1 driver so that you're able to showcase what you can do, so that you can get the preferential treatment, so that you can potentially move your way up from a lower team into a top team who's competing for race wins and championships. And then even when you get there, you quickly want to stamp your authority and get into a position where you're the #1 driver. So yeah, that's what Drive to Survive has kind of done, is it's really highlighted the shenanigans that go on behind the scenes, which we never really saw. We heard about it, but unless you was part of the grid, unless you was in F1, you didn't really know how kind of snidey and shady it can get. Schumi was notorious as being the worst enemy of his teammates, Massa and Nico, and said, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's it happens. It doesn't matter who it is. I'm sure Max does some stuff as well. He hates losing. Max hates losing. And as I say, every driver in F1, the first person you want to beat is your teammate. So you don't want to be... You can like them as much as you like. You can be friends with them off the track. You want to beat them. And that's exactly with Max and Checo. But Max held a grudge all year last year against Checo because of Monaco. Because he knew Checo purposefully spun up the rear tyres, spun his car, and pulled out the red flag at Monaco. That stopped Max from getting pole position. That meant he started behind Perez. Perez had track position on Max, and Perez then eventually won that race. Max held on to that all year, even though Max won that title by summer break, and when it came to Brazil, he still went, "Fuck you." No, like, you know why I'm not letting this guy past. Like, so F1 drivers will hold on to things and they'll remember things, and they want to win at every cost. They don't want to give their drivers, don't want to give their teammates any inkling that they're better than them. Wasn't Alonso fighting Lewis and the whole McLaren back in 2006, 2007? Yes, he purposely sat Hungary. He sat in the pit box after the tyres were put on his car, so that Lewis would not have enough time to do one final lap. That is how spicy it got at McLaren between Alonso and Hamilton, because Alonso was this 2 times world champion, getting it taken to by a rookie, and that was supposed to be his year that he won the championship and became a triple world champion. And to be honest, one of the McLarens most definitely should have won that championship that year. They lost out on a point to Kimi Räikkönen, and because of their shenanigans, they missed out on it. Otherwise, they would have won that probably quite comfortably. Lewis did refuse to give Alonso a tow earlier, but it was pretty overreaction from a toxic builder. Yeah, oh man, there's so many things I assume that will come out. I mean, there's the story. There's the story, actually. Mark Priestley used to be a McLaren engineer, and he was working with McLaren at that time. And he said in his book, Alonso came round and gave brown envelopes. He came round and gave brown envelopes to Lewis's side of the garage with money as basically a bribe to, yeah, you're right, you're sweet, like, help me out. That is open knowledge. That is open knowledge. He gave money to the other side of the garage to help him. This is against a rookie. Mob boss Alonso. It is, yeah, it's wild. That's a wild story. It's crazy. Like, Alonso was just on a mission back in. It got so toxic. It's and you can see that when they went wheel to wheel with each other as well. But yeah, no, it was great times. I wish we had those times back with those cars and that, where they're a bit smaller, louder. I generally think the racing would be better than it has been in the last few years. Yeah, I haven't read it, but I listened to when he was doing that promote. He was appearing on a few podcasts when his book was coming out, and that was one of the stories he told. And he was like, yeah, he told some good stories about Kimi Räikkönen as well, because he went away with Kimi Räikkönen a few times when he was a Ferrari, and he was just like party animal. Kimi Räikkönen, party animal. There's some good stories between him and Kimi Räikkönen, which to be expected from Kimi, to be honest. But yeah, right, guys, I'm gonna call it a day. What a stream that has been. And there we go, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that style of video. I really enjoyed standing around nearly an hour after the race chatting with you guys. Of course, we condensed this into a shorter video for you, so there's less gumph. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. No matter who you support, no matter how long you've been watching F1 for. Of course, we went off a bit of a tangent away from the Italian Grand Prix and was talking all things F1. Kind of turned into a F1 history lesson at the end there as well. But yeah, anytime I get to speak with like-minded fans, I love it. So I hope to see you all again in a couple of weeks' time at the Singapore Grand Prix. And yeah, hopefully it's another good one, regardless of who wins. So that's all we want as racing fans and as fans of F1. So yeah, remember to like and subscribe button, guys. Turn those notifications on, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye.